Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Mr. Brian Strubhar. Hey, Brian.
Hey, how are you, Dr. Kimberly?
I am great, all the way from the state of Ohio, where it's getting very cold right now.
Yep, pretty
So,
chill.
yeah, just so people know who you are, I'm going to read your short bio.
Okay.
So Brian Strubar was raised in a large family. He had nine siblings. He started his first business venture at 6 years old and was debt free by the age of 10. He paid cash for his first three vehicles. Brian has been married for over 21 years and has three daughters. He has written nine books, has been on nine private cruises, has spoken on hundreds of stages, and has been on TV four times. He has a real passion for couples. Brian loves mentoring them from struggling to survive to thriving in their relationship. Brian owns multiple businesses and oversees one ministry. So that is quite a bit of stuff going on here. But I
Yeah, it
know
keeps me
you didn't
busy.
just start out doing that, but you sure did. You were in the fast lane at age 6 years old, that's for sure.
Yeah,
So
at 6 years old, of course, I grew up out in the country. We lived about 25 miles from town. And so every house was scattered out. You could see another house, but it was a ways. And so, one of the things I did, several of the neighbors started paying me at 6 years old to mow their grass. And so I actually rented my dad's lawnmower, and then I would push it up to 2 miles one way, up and down all the mountains, the hills. We lived out in the Rocky Mountains. And so I would push it, down the gravel road for up to 2 miles one way to mow people's grass. It was just crazy, but that's what I did. I, uh, I struggled because it took me a long time. It took me 4 years to save enough money to buy my first lawnmower cash because I had to also give 50% of my earnings besides the rental of the lawnmower. I had to also give 50% for room and board, so to speak. My dad figured that was fair, so I did that until I was 21 years old. So
my goodness.
it made it challenging to save, but I still saved every penny I could. So yeah, it was fun, and I learned how to build a business. And by the age of 18, 19, I had friends that were coming to me for, business support and tutoring. And so I began, kind of into that, even though I never charged. I never opened a business as a business mentor until 2018. But I began mentoring people and working with companies all over the world, by the age of like 25.
So,
So
so I'm just curious, was your dad an entrepreneur?
he had his own tax preparation business for a number of years, and then he went into the construction business. Two
Okay.
completely different worlds, obviously. But and it's funny in my journey, when I was 15, I took a year and a half off, so to speak, from my other ventures and built my dad a new house, our family, I should say. My brother and I took a year off, and so we built a house, which was a 3,600 square foot home from the ground up. So we watched YouTube videos and stuff and learned how to do it. And we built it from the ground up, finished it and everything. And then, of course, we moved in because we lived in a single wide mobile with 10 children when I was 15. So we built a big home and then we got rid of the mobile home. So that was pretty cool. And so at that point, I learned a lot about the trades and began moving forward into the trades, even though there were things I didn't like about the trades. I just felt like it was a skill I had after building his home, and people kept coming to me, well, can you help me with this and help me with that? And so even though I hated it for many years, I kept doing it, and I did it for quite a number of years. And then clear in 2012, after I was married with kids, um, I decided to, in essence, drop the trades, and I went into full-time business consulting, and I did that for 10 years. Um, at that point, there were some issues with one of the companies I was working with, and so I dropped that company and went totally on my own in 2018, 2019. So,
So I have to go back a minute.
okay.
15 kids, a mom and a dad, and
Well,
then
there was 10
four,
kids and a mom and a dad.
oh, 10 kids and a mom and a dad.
Yep. in a single wide mobile.
As far as I can remember, in a single wide mobile, there's maybe two bedrooms,
There was actually three in that one.
three bedrooms. There's three
Yep.
bedrooms. And so
Yep.
obviously mom and dad were in one.
Yep. And all the boys in one and all the girls in one.
My goodness. You must have had beds on top of beds.
We did. So we had bunk beds on blocks.
Uh-huh.
And in the girls' room, they had a double bed on blocks. So there was a double bed under a double bed. So
Oh my goodness.
we found ways to work. And we were homeschooled. So we had homeschooling and everything in our bedroom as well. So our boys' room was our bedroom, it was the school room and the sewing room. So we had the sewing machine and everything in there so my mom could keep our clothes sewed. And it was crazy. I always joked about it. Our room was so full of everything else that there wasn't even room for the light switch. They had to put it behind the door. You literally had to go in, shut the door to turn on the light.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And because I was wondering what parent has their 6-year-old paying room and board. So did everyone in the house have to pay
Everyone
room and
did.
board?
Yep.
They did.
Yep.
What
If we
concept?
worked outside the home or made income, that's how we do it. Now we didn't have to pay room and board out of like birthday gifts. If my grandparents would give us, $5 or $10 for a birthday gift, we didn't have to pay out of that. That was our gift. But we very much valued gifts because we didn't have to pay out of it.
So I'm also wondering, so what did some of your siblings do to create money? Did all of you create money at a very early age?
Not all of them as young as I did. My brother kind of took over my lawn mowing business for a while, especially when I was about 18, 19. And well, actually at 14, I started going through for the summers over to the Willamette Valley in Oregon and working on a big farm. My uncles owned a massive grass seed farm and warehouse. So I would go over there for a month, month and a half every summer. And so then my brother would take over my business while I was gone. And then once I moved away at the age of 22, then my brother took over my business completely. So, yeah, we did all kinds of stuff. We started working at a large auto dealer. It was the world's largest Dodge truck dealer that was close by there. So we started working there on their construction team
Mhm.
when I was still a teenager. And so we did that. We worked full time there, my dad, my brother, and I. And then eventually I moved across the country and moved to Ohio to work for a friend of mine to help him manage his construction company here in Ohio. So that was kind of the transition.
Wow, just so different to so many people's upbringings because,
Yep.
you know, people have this concept, well, children should play and explore and, you know,
Yep.
and be carefree. And
And
that,
we had our carefree times. We were homeschooled, so we also lived on 26 acres and had both a big marsh and a lot of wooded area as well as open field. So we played and played games. We sled rode and built forts in the woods and cut trails and everything else. So we had a lot of fun, and we had a lot of friends that would come over and so yeah, we had a lot of great times as a kid. But I think that that also taught us work ethic to be able to learn how to work and to, provide and save, having to, in essence, pay bills, if you want to call it that, teaches you the value of a dollar, that it's not as easy as you might think. There's work, there's expenses, there's things you have to budget for, so to speak. And so that was one of the benefits that I really appreciated, in learning that. I think that that's something a lot of parents never think through is how to teach your kid personal responsibilities and understand budgeting and, finances. I don't think most parents, are too concerned. Oh, they'll figure it out when they get out on their own. And they probably will, but they might hit a few bumps in the road.
right. Well, the thing is, they don't even teach that in school.
I know.
I
Isn't that
mean, I
sad?
think I think there's a huge percentage, 50% or more of adults who, when they hit, 20 years old, still do not know anything about money or how to budget, or,
Yeah.
they get out there and realize at the end of the month that they don't have enough money. And they go, what happened? I remember when I moved out to my first apartment on my own, and all these all of a sudden the heating bill started coming, and I'm like, what's this for?
Yep.
Yeah, I signed up for the heat, but I guess I didn't think about that there was going to be a bill coming for that heat.
Yep. And I think it's interesting how so many kids, especially, take things for granted from their parents, like the heat, the water, electric bill, all these things. They never think about it, and they don't understand. Even just auto insurance can be a pretty major bill,
Mhm.
especially as a young person. So they don't think about it. Oh, I just want a car, and they just save enough just to get the car. But there's a lot more expense to a car than just the purchase price. Just the tags and insurance can run you a fair fee at this point. So, I think it's something that we as parents should be more responsible to teach our children, you know, what the schools don't, especially. They're there to teach them, the academic side of, reading and writing and, arithmetic, etc. But again, it's so important for us as parents to teach them the life skills.
Yes, yes, for sure. So I love your story.
Yeah,
I know growing up, we just got an allowance. We actually got an allowance for
we
doing,
didn't.
our
We never
chores.
got an allowance. Our allowance went the other way.
That's what I mean. So unique. So,
Yeah.
you went from grass cutting to construction and, building a house
Hmm.
and then and then somewhere along the way you started writing books. What did you write
That
books
was in
about?
2018. I began to realize actually one of my mentors, I'm sure you've heard of John Maxwell, one of the world famous authors on leadership. And I think he's written close to 100 books on leadership now. And one of the books I was reading from him at the time was about why he started writing and how he realized he could not influence future generations or really leave um, a great remembrance of himself and his wisdom, so to speak. He couldn't influence others without some kind of writing. And yes, you can, so to speak, through, videos and podcasts and things like that. You can to an extent, but there's so many millions of them, just like books. But how are they going to find it? Where at least with books, you can search and find it much easier than searching the entire internet. So I think it was something that kind of inspired me that, there are a lot of things I've learned both in life and business and relationships and things that I began to think through them. And I have a weird process for writing a book. I will actually think through the entire book in my head before I ever start writing. And then once I start writing, I'll literally just start at the beginning. I start with the index, jot all my titles down, and then I just start going through chapter by chapter and just start putting it on paper.
That's very interesting. I
So,
do something similar when I'm gonna create a piece of art. I
mm-hmm.
might think about it for 2 months or even
Yep.
3 months, and I'm putting it together in my head as I'm going throughout my day,
Yep.
and then I sit down and I start painting.
That's cool. Very similar process, it sounds like. That's
Mhm.
really awesome. But it's cool because you can often work out the kinks and pick out your color palettes and all the different items and things you want, the layers basically that you want to put into your painting. And it's kind of the same with a book. I'm thinking about all the different lessons I want to share, stories I want to share, things that I, need to be careful how I say them. I'm literally thinking through a lot of that subconsciously, even, as I see and hear things, then I'm like, oh, I should definitely add that to my book. I need to mention that. And so now I start thinking through which chapter or what part of the general outline of the book I want to put it in. And so it really helps me to figure out kind of the general layout of the book in my head.
Mhm. So, what book did you start out with? Because so many people they say they want to write a book, but they don't know even what to write about. So, how did you decide what to write about and what did you write about?
So the first book I wrote was called The Ripple Effect Mindset. And it was because my mindset, and my dad taught me this early on in life. He said, it's not about what happens to you, but it's about your response. And you're not responsible for what happens to you. You're only responsible for the way you respond to whatever happens around you, to you, etc. And so one of the things I learned, growing up and doing business and relationships and stuff, and I had a lot of relationships because I grew up in a large family. We learned a lot about relationships from the get-go, even as a young child. And then as a teenager, we were responsible to help, basically handhold a younger sibling as well and help them, with things, teaching, learning, and in homeschool, we often help teach the younger ones. And so it helps because my mom was also busy, preparing meals and keeping up with the rest of the house. She couldn't always do all the bookwork. So those of us in the upper grades helped the lower grades. So, that taught us a lot too. And obviously, you learn more by teaching. And so that taught us a lot about relationships. So I just began to share some of what I learned about different mindsets and, different ripple effects that can have into your life. Because if you think or respond a certain way, it can have a ripple effect into the way you show up for work or show up at home in your family or your marriage, for example. There's so many different things that your thought process dictates the way you respond. So if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you may, give them the finger, or you may smile and wave, realizing, hey, they didn't mean to. So it all dictates based on your mindset, how you see yourself, how you see life. Oftentimes how you feel about yourself will dictate your response to other people.
Exactly. So, going back to growing up with um,
Hmm.
five siblings in a room,
Well, four
I know
plus myself.
there's
Luckily, we were
there's
evenly split. There was five girls and five boys.
I know there's times when I am upset with someone in my family.
Hmm.
And it's so easy for us to each go to our rooms. We
Yep.
just go to our rooms until we're done being upset. But you had to go to sleep in the same room with
Yep.
possibly someone you were pretty upset with at the moment. So,
You
what
just
did,
learn to
yeah.
work out your differences, usually then and there in the moment. And it was interesting doing that. For us, if we had a quote disagreement or needed some personal time, we would often run down into our woods, or into the forest area of our property. We'd run down in there and take time away. I also found a lot of time to be, alone with the Lord, for example, when I was out fishing or even hunting. That was one of the things my dad taught us. And that was one of the ways we provided, meat, so to speak, for our family. We would hunt for most of our meat. And then we had a massive garden. We had almost a half-acre garden. And so, that was also one of my chores, was to keep that garden weed free. There could not be a weed in it, or I couldn't go hunting or fishing. So, that just teaches children that there are, value in a hard work and a work ethic and keeping things up at home too, whether it's, keeping the garden weed free or, always doing the dishes or whatever. We all learn to share chores and, work together. We became each other's best friends, so to speak.
Hmm. And I know you do some mentoring with couples.
Hmm.
So you already talked about, to not to be reactive when you're communicating, but what are
Yeah.
some of the key things that keep the couples together that stay together?
So one of the biggest challenges I think in any close relationship is communication. And communication is key. That's often what sets us apart from the animal kingdom, is we truly have a different level of communication, I believe. And I'm not saying animals can't communicate, but I think that we have a different level of communication where we are sharing much more emotions and, our thought process, and we can think and reason, where I don't know that animals have much more than instinct in most cases. There are some smart animals. I'm not trying to downplay animals, but I'm saying I think that we as humans, one of the big things that sets us apart is our communication level. And so obviously that can be used for good or bad. And if we're poor communicators, that also will affect our relationships. And so one of the things we strive to help couples understand is how easy, for example, it is to blame your spouse. And just as an example, if I'm saying, you always this or you never that, they immediately become defensive because I'm blaming them. Where if I say, I feel like you rarely this, or I struggle to feel, loved by you when you this, if you blame it on yourself and you say, I feel, and use I statements instead of you statements, it totally changes the way you come across. And it helps to prevent that defensive, attack mode. Because if I say you always, you're like, well, no, I don't always, I this once or twice, you know? And so learning how to phrase things is another big part of communication, and learning that, God gave us two ears and one mouth. It's just as important to learn how to listen to your spouse. Listening is also a big part of communication. If there's not someone to listen, you're probably not really communicating. You can speak noise, into the air. But if nobody's listening to you, it doesn't really do a lot of good.
Yeah, that makes sense because communication is someone saying something, the other person receiving it. It's almost like
Right.
playing catch. They're
Yep.
receiving it, and then they acknowledge, okay, yeah, I got it, and then they say something back to you, and you say
Yep.
whether you understand it or you don't. And if that doesn't happen, then you're right, you're just making noise.
Yeah. And noise doesn't profit much. I mean, you can run a chainsaw and it doesn't do a whole lot other than, make a lot of noise. But again, one of the interesting things, like you said, it's like a volley, so to speak, back and forth. But how easy is it to misunderstand, especially with text? Because it seems like our society has gone a lot to texting and instant messaging and, apps and stuff. And that's great. It saves time in many cases because you can get right to the point. You can give very pertinent or important information, just a few phrases or sentences, sometimes even a word or two, but yet it's so easy to misunderstand tone or to judge their motive of how they're responding. And so that's one of the important things that we stress to couples is make sure if you feel like maybe they're upset at you, call them. Don't just trust your instinct, say, well, they're mad. No, they may not be. They may have just simply said it. Just because they put a capital letter or something or misspelled something doesn't necessarily mean they're upset. So you have to also, trust the best of your spouse as well. And if you don't, you're obviously going to end up in trouble much quicker.
Mhm, for sure. So just changing directions a little bit. So
Yep.
you've done nine, was it nine? How many bit? Lots of businesses.
Yeah, I've done a number of different
You've
companies and
done a
businesses.
lot of businesses and also you have a ministry. So what
Yep.
businesses are you doing now and what is your ministry?
So our ministry is with couples. We minister both in small and private retreats as well as couples mentoring and small groups. So we do both virtual and in-person small groups, which are very limited. We want to limit them in size so that people can feel heard. Obviously, if you're on a group with, let's just say, 1,000 people, you're like, well, even if I raise my hand, I'll probably be 40 down the line. They'll probably never get to me. And so we want people to feel heard and to be able to share their perspectives and get the help they need one on one. And so that's one of the things that we focus on, even though we've volunteered with large ministries where they minister to hundreds and hundreds at a time, even thousands at a time in a weekend. Sometimes we're doing 20, 30,000 in a weekend. We felt like, yeah, there's great help that way. You're ministering to millions, so to speak. But on the other hand, they don't have anybody to hold their hand in the application. And one of the things we saw was everybody comes away from, a big retreat with lots of great ideas and lots of things they want to implement, but nobody holds their hand to actually take action and apply what they learned. And to me, learning something is great, but now it makes you as a knowledgeable idiot. If you don't apply what you learned, it does you no good. I mean, I could know how to drive a car, but if I don't ever go get in the car and drive it, it does me no good to know how to drive it. And so learning is great, but applying is even greater. And that's where transformation happens. So we look at it as learning without application equals virtually no transformation. Transformation comes from learning and application. And so that's one of the things we try to implement in our ministry is really helping people by hand holding and mentoring them into that application process through those challenging, changing because changing is hard. And
Mm,
they say that's the most constant is change. And I believe that's really true. If we don't change, we very quickly become rutted, so to speak, or we become stagnant in our relationships and even in life. If all you do is get up and go to work every day, it becomes very stagnant, very robotic almost. And so we have to have things that break that monotony. And so that's one of the things we try to do is handhold with people through those changes because they're very challenging.
mhm.
It's not easy to change. I don't think any of us enjoy change, especially when you have to change yourself. You can't change your spouse. You can only change you.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's not easy, especially when you have certain habits or you have
Yep.
certain expectations. I think even the expectations are the most
Yep.
important, of like, even roles or things you thought about, your partner or your spouse for a long time. And you have to change those mindsets, even as like,
Yep.
is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. And expectations often lead to anger. When we have unfulfilled expectations, we get angry or upset. We think that those expectations in many cases are a right. And just because we expect something doesn't mean it's a right. Like I might expect my spouse to cook dinner by 6 o'clock when I get home from work, but if she doesn't have it ready, then I'm upset. Well, that was just an expectation. I thought she knew I wanted it 6 when I get home. You know, I didn't tell her that. I just thought she knew it. And so then we get upset at each other. That's just an expectation that was unmet, and therefore we get upset. So if you don't have that expectation, and you can't expect your spouse to read your mind. I mean, I don't think any of us have mind reading, abilities if they don't say something or act somewhere. And there is a lot of other quote unspoken communication. Obviously, there's body language and different ways we can communicate. But again, communication and verbal communication, I should say, is the easiest form of communication because you can actually tell them what you're thinking or expecting. So
Mm,
don't expect them to know your expectation unless you tell them.
right. So, I I think women might have more problem with this than men, but um, what is the best way to let someone know what your needs are? So many, I know from a woman's perspective, where we feel like we're always doing things and helping, but there's certain things that we would like, but we don't always say them.
And that's the challenge. And that's what we run into a lot is the women especially have needs, but they don't tell their man. They expect him to know it or figure it out. Well, men are not good, like women, I should say, at reading between the lines. They're also not as communicative in many areas in different ways. Women tend to be more communicative, especially of their emotions. And this is obviously a generalization, but most women tend to be more emotionally driven than men. And so they are more emotionally needy than men, though there are some emotional needs of men too. But they are often less needy, or at least show their neediness less in the emotional realm. And so that's where, without telling your husband, hey, I need you to just sit and hold me for a few minutes, or, hey, I had a really rough day. The kids beat me up all day, or, I just feel really tired from dealing with my mom, or, whatever it might be. Your friend's going through a divorce and you're helping her through that, and you just feel really worried about your own relationship. You just need consoled. And so sometimes you just need to tell him why you're feeling that way. And now he has no problem holding you or, being a shoulder for you to cry on, whatever. But they need to know that. They can't read into you. They're just like, well, why are you upset? Well, because my friend's going through a divorce and I'm worried about us. Okay. And what do you want me to do about it? Yeah, we don't know unless you tell us what you need or why you're struggling. So if you can learn how to verbalize what you're truly feeling inside, it helps the man. It's almost like giving them a window into your soul. Now they can actually see what your needs are and why you're struggling. Basically, they can see why your home is messy instead of going, well, why is your house so messy? I mean, I can't see in, but it sounds like a terrorist going through there. Yeah. So you have to give us a window, so to speak, into your soul and into your struggles, why you're struggling with things.
Exactly. So, going back to business, so you're
Mhm.
in a lot of different businesses. What businesses are you doing now?
So currently, I still run a full-time construction business where we help do, remodeling mostly and some new builds. And then I also have a small fishing charter business that I run mostly when the weather's nice. I don't do it when the weather's cold or the lakes are froze over. It's hard to operate a boat. But I do that. And that was actually an interesting transition when COVID hit. I was doing a lot of in-home consulting with people, and of course, COVID shut that down almost, on the doorstep. You couldn't go into someone else's home. And so I immediately began thinking about what can we do? How can I earn money? Because obviously, if your business shuts down, you have to be able to make money to pay the bills. The bills don't stop just because COVID hit.
Mhm.
They still want to keep your lights on and your water running. So I began to look at options, and at least here in Ohio, they did not limit us to going outdoors. You could go out to the parks or the lakes or whatever. And so I thought, hey, maybe what I should do is buy a boat and offer to start taking people, their friends or whatever out to the lake, and they can at least enjoy it and get out and about. And so we did that. And we started doing all kinds of things. We did sunset cruises and fishing, and I even bought bow and arrows and started doing bow fishing because there was nobody in the area that was doing bow fishing, where you actually stand on the boat and you shoot the fish with a bow and arrow.
I've never
And
even
so
heard of that.
it's one of the coolest sports there is, and it's very addicting. And so that was really our mainstay for a while, was doing the fishing and charters and taking people out. So that was really a cool transition, that almost immediately within a couple months of COVID hitting, I was able to transition and open that business. And it's not near a mainstay now, but it's still something fun to do and help people here and there. They still reach out and go, "Hey, are you still doing that?" "Yeah, I can still take you out." I don't push it as a business much now because it's like I don't have time and COVID's not near the restraint that it was, but it was a really fun thing. And the other cool thing that a lot of people need to realize, when you start a business, I was able to write my boat off as a business expense. So think about what you want, find a business you can start around that, and now you can write off what you want. So let's say you want a boat, start a small fishing charter business. You need the boat for your fishing charters, or it's a great asset to fishing charters at least. You can now write it off as a tax expense or as a tax write-off.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
I don't know if every state is that way, but I know here you could at least. And so you could write it off up to 3 years. So that's just one of the cool things that I think a lot of people need to understand in business. Understand what the tax code is, so to speak, and how to use it to your own advantage. That's what the rich do. They use their tax code, to get the things they want and get a tax break by doing it.
Yes, wonderful. We were talking about communicating with people and, texting is not always that great, but more and more people are using AI in business. I know they're using it like on LinkedIn where I'm connecting with people.
Yep.
Sometimes, they're just using it everywhere. So
Yeah.
how should we be using AI? What's the good, the bad, the ugly of AI?
Yeah, and that's a great topic. We could go on for hours about AI, but the thing about AI is it has its benefits, but it also has its drawbacks. And one of the big things I see, especially if it comes to the writing world, there's a lot of people that I knew that are like, just use AI, it'll write your book for you. Yeah, but it's not even you then. If you just tell it, write this, put this, and do that, and share this story and whatever, and AI writes the whole book for you, that's all fine and dandy, but it's not you writing the book. And it was interesting, several people I knew did that. And so I would ask them questions. I was like, well, I don't know. I never read it myself, but you supposedly wrote it? Why would you put your name on something that in essence a machine wrote? I wouldn't.
Mhm.
And so you lose your individuality. And same with one of the questions I ask people is, do you like talking to a machine, so to speak, customer service? When you call a corporation,
Mhm.
would you rather talk to the machine or a real human? Most of us would prefer to talk to a human being versus, a machine doing, so to speak. God didn't call us human doings, we're human beings. And so having someone to understand your challenge or what you're going through on the other end makes you feel heard, even if it may not resolve the issue immediately. And sometimes you have to call back multiple times or, work through the process. I still prefer to talk to a human. And so I ask people, in your business, would your customers rather talk to a human or would they rather just talk to a machine?
Mhm.
And that's just one of the things I think about. Same with writing. Would people rather read what a machine wrote or rather read what a person wrote?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel the same way about customer service. I want to call and talk to someone. And when there's
Yeah.
those companies that where there's not that option, they like
Yep.
email us your problem. I'm like, how long is this going to take?
Yeah.
First of all, are they going to understand what it is I need? And how
Yep.
many emails is it going to take? And how many weeks is it going to
Yep.
take for me to get an actual answer and resolution to the issue
Hmm.
happening using email? I'd
Yep.
much rather just talk to someone.
And I think that's just part of the growing pains of AI that, we're just going to have to work through. I think it will eventually iron itself out and companies will realize that they're in essence hurting their customer base, so to speak, because I've even left companies and dropped purchasing their products or services because they have no human touch, if you want to call it that. They have no personal interaction. And so I think that as companies begin to realize that and they begin to get feedback from customers, I think they're going to realize there is a true value in having people, if you want to call it that, interacting with their customers versus just AI or robots. Because there are restaurants you go in that don't even have servers now. It's all robotic. You literally have a screen on your table, you type in your order, and a robot delivers. It's like, no, I want a person. I can say, how are you today? I don't care about some robotic arm delivering my food. That's ridiculous.
Uh-huh.
Same with even if at a grocery store, I prefer to go through an actual cashier.
Me too.
Yes, I can self-checkout. I've figured it out. But again, wouldn't I rather deal with a person? Yeah. It's just to me, that's also job security and helps to maintain jobs. How many jobs do we want to outsource to AI? Most of us could actually be replaced in many cases by an AI or robotic, machine of some sort. Most jobs can be. And so why would we want to necessarily speed up that process? You know, I think we also need to be careful in how much we openly accept AI because that just encourages even more adoption.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense because I'm that way too. I like to
Mhm.
connect with people, so I go into my bank. You know,
Yeah, so
I
do I.
don't go through the drive-through. I don't use my automatic app. I go into the bank.
Yeah,
The same thing at the grocery store. If I have a choice to go through someone's line, I'm gonna go through someone's line. Why?
yeah,
Because we need that personal connection for one thing.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I'm
And
thinking
you can't
about.
have friends without being friendly. A
Mhm,
machine can't go out to dinner with you very easy. It's stuck at that restaurant or it's stuck at that bank. And same with an ATM. I would rather go inside the bank and deposit than just do it through the ATM. But if I'm after hours and I still need to make a deposit, I can use an ATM, but I still prefer to do it during business hours and actually interact with a human. And I think that's one of the big differences we're starting to see is people really do need that personal communication. And we saw it during COVID. How
mhm.
many of us got so fed up with seeing nobody? I mean, you literally sit in your house and you see your family, and that's it. No, we all need human interaction. We need relationship. And I think that's one of the powerful things is finding each of us individually our own passion, our own purpose. What is that? What is your purpose? Why are you here? Why do you have the skills that God gave you? What are the talents that he specifically gave you that he maybe never gave anyone else? And how are you using that to benefit humankind? Or what are you putting out in the market, so to speak? What are you providing that people can now benefit from?
Exactly. And, as we're talking about just human interaction, even if you're in a big city, don't you like that small town feel? Are there certain places you go, whether it be the cleaners or the same place you go for breakfast every morning? There's places where you go and you see familiar faces, and there's
Yeah,
something very satisfying and
there
secure
is.
about that and
Yeah,
making
it
you
feels
feel
more
happy.
secure. I
Mm-hmm.
agree. You feel more secure and a little bit more intimate, I guess, when you feel like you've known the person. Just like if you've had the same banker or the same grocer for 10 years, you feel much more open with that person than just walking into a totally foreign place. Like if you're traveling and you go into a supermarket, to get some groceries, it's completely different than going in where you know the grocer, you know the cashier, you know the meat cutter, he knows exactly what you like. It's just totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's what we're beginning to see is a little bit of a separation. Yes, it's nice to have AI, and there's a place for AI. I use AI not every day, but very regularly, but I use it more for research, statistics, finding information quickly. AI is very valuable. It can save me searching through hundreds of articles, for example, and it can summarize hundreds of articles in seconds and saves me a lot of time. So that's one of the benefits of using AI for research, yes, it's very valuable. But I think we have to be careful how much we adopt it into our day-to-day life. Just as an example, I'm also, I wouldn't say afraid of, but I'm very cautious in a sense of the self-driving cars because I still understand that there are all different types of road conditions and situations and road hazards that a camera on my vehicle may not pick up quick enough to save me. And so, I would rather have humans that understand the road is slippery, for example, because we're coming into wintertime. If you have ice on the road, the camera may not notice it's an icy spot and it cannot react as quickly on ice. Therefore, it's not going to know all that.
Mm-hmm.
And it may know and understand some of that, but it may not know all of it and how slippery it is. And so, depending on how AI transitions into more and more high tech, it may get better and better. But again, I don't want to be the dummy, that crashes for it to get better. I don't want to lose my life while the AI is still, training itself.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I mean, that reminds me of, the even I'm in medical, so the medical
Hmm.
institutions where, they're doing surgery. Do you want to be the first person they do this new surgery on?
No.
No.
Uh-uh. Nope. I don't think any of us want to be anybody's first surgery.
No,
Like, let's hope your book smarts work.
that's right.
Make sure you get the right leg.
That is for sure.
You know.
So, you mentioned earlier, when sometimes when you just needed to get away or just you would go
Mhm.
fishing and that's where you could be with the Lord. That's where
Yep.
you were fed spiritually. So, talk about that, your relationship and
Mhm.
just your um feelings or beliefs around religion or
Mhm.
relationships.
So I think relationships, especially with those closest to us, like your spouse, your kids, your parents, etc., those are some of the most important relationships that we need to foster through life and be very careful. Friends come and go, people move in and out of our life, so to speak, and it's great to have friends. And a lot of times we'll have friends that are there for a lifetime, but again, a lot of friends and acquaintances come and go. Same with coworkers, etc. I would say be careful what you share with a coworker because it may hurt you. You just never know. I've seen cases where, and the biggest cause of, mass shootings and things are often from people losing their job. They'll come back and start killing people. And so just be careful in the workplace how much personal information you give. I think that's important to remember because people may use that against you. And when it comes to religion, I think that we all need to find our own way, so to speak. And it's not about a religion as much as it is a relationship with Christ, or God or the divine or whatever you want to call it. But I think that whether you believe in a God or not, it's important that we find personal space to connect with yourself, just to get out into nature, enjoy some peace and quiet, listen to the birds, smell the roses, so to speak. Stop and just enjoy the sound of the waterfall or whatever it might be. I think we all need, quote, downtime just to connect. A lot of people call it grounding, where they'll go outside barefoot, walk through the grass or dig their toe in the dirt or whatever it might be. Those are all just good, natural things to do. And I think that it does help us to be able to deal with the stress at work or family issues or whatever. The challenges of life are much easier to deal with when you feel calm in your spirit. And to me, I feel much more calm after spending an hour or two alone somewhere, even once or twice a week, just to get an hour or two away. And if you're a busy mom or housewife, sometimes that's hard to do. You have kids around you, it feels like 24/7. So get up early or stay up late, put the kids to bed, stay up an hour, go sit outside, lay in the grass and look up at the stars, or, go for a walk in the darkness, or, find a way to be alone. Tell your husband to watch the kids for an hour. You're going to the lake just to chill, or, go for a walk in the park or do something. There's always ways. If you're looking for a solution, you will always find one. But if you're just complaining about not having one, you're probably not going to find a solution.
Eva, I love the way you said all of that. That was like
So,
perfect.
yeah, I
Perfect.
think life in general is often overwhelming because we just don't take time to be ourselves. You don't even, a lot of times I think we almost lose ourselves in serving others and in being what we feel we need to be, whether it's a mom or housewife or, the breadwinner for the family, whatever it might be. We often get so taken up in that we lose sight of what do I truly like? What do I enjoy? Maybe you enjoy reading. Sit down and read a book. If you enjoy reading, maybe you enjoy crocheting or knitting or doing things with your hands, maybe you enjoy hiking, then go for a hike. Maybe you enjoy paddleboarding or, whatever it is you enjoy that. You only have one life. So enjoy what you enjoy. Find your passions. Find the things that make you feel, alive and well and successful. And I think one of the biggest things is most people never define success. And that's one of the challenges that I find is so many people have no idea. They think success is a dollar figure, especially in the bank, and it's not. You know, the greatest custodian could be more successful than Bill Gates or Elon Musk. You take some of the richest people in the world and they're not happy. Money in the bank does not equal satisfaction and success. You know, how many people win the lottery and have millions of dollars in the bank, but yet they're not happy? Winning the lottery or massive funding in the bank, money does not equal success. To me, is more about finding who you are, what you enjoy, being able to do what you want with who you want, when you want, the way you want. That to me is success. If you're not literally stuck in the rut or the grind of just paying bills or just getting by, just trying to survive, as long as you can enjoy life and enjoy the journey, that to me is much more important than it is to just have lots of money in the bank. Because lots of money in the bank doesn't make you friends. It doesn't make you, even though money is nice and it's nice to have money, you can have fun with a lot of money. But again, some of the happiest people have the smallest amount of earthly goods and possessions. And one of the things that really changed my perspective on that was on one of the mission trips I took as a teenager. Maybe I was 20, I forget, but right around my upper teens, early 20s, I went to a mission field and we went into the slum area where these people, there was a whole town living in the county dump.
Mm.
And their house was like a washing machine box. That was their house. Their sink was a 5-gallon bucket. That was what they had. And the kids were happy just having a ball. That was their only possession, was a flat soccer ball. But that was the happiest thing they had. And they just loved it to death. They would play soccer all day, every day. And it was like, how can I be so unhappy when I have so much to be grateful for? And yet things don't make us happy. You could have a garage full of toys, but nobody to enjoy them with. And so I think it's so easy to lose sight of what is the most important thing. I think it's relationships. I think it's having people around us that love and care about us. It's not having money or wealth or fame. It doesn't do you any good. At the end of the day, most of those people that have wealth and fame have no true friends or very few. And so I think it's important to realize what is most important in life. What is success to you? And I think if we would all take a day or two or a week or two, whatever it is, and really think through what is success to you. Success to you might be totally different than it is to me. And I think it's okay for each of us to have our own definition of success. If I'm an aspiring author, maybe my definition of success is to write a book or to be a best-selling author. But if I'm a photographer, it's to have, the best or greatest pictures or the most experiences where I was able to photograph my journey around the world, or, depending what my challenge is.
Mhm.
What is success to each of us? It's going to vary. And I think that's what makes us feel like we don't have a passion or a purpose. We don't know what success is. And if you don't know what success is, you have no goal. How do you know when you arrive? Just like if you're going on vacation, if you don't have a destination, you never know when you get there.
Mhm.
Shall I stop here? Well, no, I don't like the look of that. Okay, let's keep going. But you don't even know where you're going. And so, how many of us live life without a destination?
That's true. A lot of people do. And I think of it as a boat out in the ocean without any oars or motor. If you
Yeah.
don't have any of that and you don't know where you're going, you're just gonna go wherever the wind blows you.
Whatever current takes you, you're just going with the drift. So, and
Right.
it's sad. So many people do. They're just pushed around by whatever people say or think, and they just, whoever they're around, they just, run in that direction. Then they get around somebody else, and they run in that direction. Well, you're just going in circles.
Mhm.
And you can't please everyone around you. So you have to figure out what success is for you. And now you have a destination, you have a purpose, somewhere to get to, and then enjoy the journey getting there. If you have to read books or go get degrees or, whatever it is you need to get to your destination, then enjoy that process of becoming the person you need to be, of getting and aligning with people around you to help you become the person you need to become. And I think that's what we all miss, is enjoying the journey. Life is a process. It's not a destination where once you've arrived at, let's just say it's a million in the bank. Everybody thinks, oh, once you're a millionaire, you're good. Yeah, but does a million in the bank satisfy you? No. A lot of these rich people are making $1 million an hour and it still doesn't satisfy. You know, Money doesn't satisfy. You have to have people and purpose and relationships. True satisfaction and joy comes from within, not from the circumstances around you.
Exactly.
If you're not happy with yourself, you're really not going to be happy with anyone else either. So
That's true. I've had some of those people come into my office for an eye exam. They
I'm
come in,
sure.
they're already angry.
So one of the challenges I would ask you is, as an eye doctor, or et cetera, whatever, in the medical space, do you find a lot of people can see but have no vision?
Oh, for sure. For sure. They can see, but they have no vision, or they I work a lot with people to expand their vision because I have a
Mhm.
specialty behavioral optometry where I actually work with people how to function, not
Yeah.
just see, but how do they function. And so many people are so they almost have blinders on and they don't see anything around them. And so if what they're looking at is really happy, then they're happy. And if they happen to get up and look at something that's sad in the morning, they
Yeah.
wake up and they're just mad and sad all
Mhm.
day because their vision isn't open up to all the possibilities and all the
Yeah,
joys of life.
absolutely. And that reminds me when you just said that, I don't remember who told me this, but I think it's important that we as humans basically inventory our influences. Make sure you know what influences, you're allowing into your heart and life. Like if the news always gets you down, then don't watch the news.
Mhm.
You know, if the weather bothers you, then don't watch the weather. Whatever. If talking to certain people just always leaves you in a negative space, then don't spend as much time. Don't prioritize time with that person. Find people that help lift you up and encourage you and make you feel good. Spend more time around them. If personal space out in the world or on the lake or in the park, if reading a book is what makes you feel better, then prioritize things that make you feel better because now you're also able to give more back to the world.
So true, so true. So at this point, I'd like for people to know like how to
Mhm.
connect with you. So, websites, things like that, what services you have available now. So this is your advertisement piece.
Okay. So first off, one of the coolest things is where you and I met. I think that's really cool. We met on the Owl app, which is a relatively new platform, just a few years old, but it really allows you to be able to call someone without their phone number. So you can just call them directly through the app. And that's where we had our first conversation. And
Mhm.
I feel like it's such a cool and different level of connection than just meeting them on LinkedIn or, hitting a friend request on Facebook or, follower on Instagram. Those are all fine and dandy, but you don't really know the person. You don't get to hear their struggles. You don't get to talk to them and hear their sadness from losing their parent or their dog or whatever. Where if you can have a human interaction, just like we are here, being able to see and hear the person is a totally different level of connection and communication than just a picture or just an image, and a click or a like or, a virtual hug or whatever, a star, etc. We all give these thumbs ups and whatever, but it's not the same. And so I prefer connections through Owl, for example. And if anybody needs the spelling on that, it's an app, both Android and iPhone. It's OWWLL. So you can find it has two W's, two L's, just one O. Um, but that's a really cool platform. Of course, I'm on most of the other large social medias like Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. And I'm happy to connect with people. They can also find my books on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. They're available on the web. If they just type in my name, they'll see the different books come up. So, there's a lot of different ways to get in touch with me. If they're local here, they can, reach out to me as well. There's a lot of different ways they can find me either through my businesses or, whatever. My website is also easy if they just go to nextstepmindset.com. That's one of my main websites that links a lot of my other sites and businesses to it. So if they're looking for the next step in life or business or relationships, that's one of the greatest ways to reach out to me.
All right. Well, thank you. So now I
Yeah.
have a personal question for you.
Okay.
What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment at this point?
So one of the interesting things, I probably never thought as a young business owner that I would ever say this, but to me, it's not as much about making money now as it is leaving an impact. I love to watch people's eyes open and see their aha moments and to see their life truly change. So mentoring people both in business, relationships, communication, I just love seeing the change. And I think that means more to me now than even going out and making $1 million, for example. It's not about the money. Money does not bring happiness. It's about leaving an impact, changing someone's life, truly connecting with another person. And I feel that leaves so much more such a feeling of success that I actually connected with that person. I actually left a valuable input or deposit, so to speak, of even if it's just a little bit of wisdom. If I can deposit some of my, headaches or frustrations and it can save them or help them, when they encounter that, to me, that's far more valuable than just making a buck. So that would probably be, my greatest. um, feeling of success at this point is feeling like I truly impacted the person.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And
Yeah,
thank you
absolutely.
for being on
I
the
love your show
podcast.
and I love to be here. And I just thank you for taking the time to do this and to put your time and talents into the atmosphere and into the podcast space. What a blessing you are.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So I have
Absolutely.
one last question before we finish.
Okay. What's that?
What is your best advice on living an amazing, incredible life?
Find something higher than yourself to live for. I would say that's probably the biggest key is if you're only living for yourself and your own satisfaction, it's going to be tough. But if you can find someone or something or some purpose higher than yourself, it gives you something greater to live for than just yourself and your own temporary happiness.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you again soon.
All right.